Namaste. Today we are having Dr. Sampadananda Mishra ji with us, who is a great Sanskrit scholar and professor in Rishihood University, Sonipat. Today, on behalf of the Mythic Society, I welcome him for this online lecture. Dr. Sampadananda Mishra ji is basically from the land of Subhash Chandra Bose. And Dr. Sampadananda Mishra ji is from a Sanskrit scholars family. He studied in Orissa. His primary and degree education have been done in Orissa. Afterwards, he did his MPhil in Puducherry in Sanskrit grammar. Afterwards, he did his PhD, especially in the subject Sanskrit and evolution of speech, that is from Utkal University, Orissa. And at present, Dr. Sampadananda Mishra ji is associated with Rishihood University, Sonipat. He is the director and Dean Culture at Center for Human Sciences at Rishihood University. He is also a visiting faculty at the Hindu University of America, USA, and where he teaches about the understanding Sanatana Dharma in the light of Sri Aurobindo. Dr. Sampadananda Mishra ji is an authority on Aurobindo philosophy. He has started 1 year certificate course on Aurobindo philosophy, and he has written many books about Sanskrit as well as the Sri Aurobindo. His books are Sri Aurobindo on Sanskrit, Samskrita and Evolution of Human Speech, Reading Sri Aurobindo, and Hasyamanjari, which is a collection of stories in Sanskrit about humor. And he has created a lot of digital content on Vedas, Upanishads, Gita in the light of Sri Aurobindo. And his another book is The Wonder That is Sanskrit. And he has done some unique achievements, like launched a first ever 24/7 Sanskrit radio called Divyavani, which operates for 24 hours. And he is the founder of Samskrita Bhala Sahitya Parishad, then to create literature in Sanskrit for the children. And he has, as a mentor at Seth M.R. Jaipuria School in Lucknow, he has created curriculum for the students in Sanskrit for almost 10 years. And he has developed one more language curry, where he has developed the entire content of the Sanskrit offered by the language curry apps, through which around 1 million students are learning Sanskrit. And his achievements have been recognized by many institutes and even by the government. For his contribution to Sanskrit language and literature, Mishra ji was conferred with the President of India Award in 2012, Badarayana Vyasa Samman, and Kendriya Sahitya Academy in 2018 for his book, especially for children, which is Shanaya. And he has started one more initiative, that is Vande Mataram Library, to republish the books in Sanskrit and the books translated from Sanskrit to other languages. Dr. Sampadananda Mishra ji, a professor, Sanskrit scholar, writer, orator, an authority on Sri Aurobindo. We can call him, in a simple word, a rishi in modern attire. We are very happy that Dr. Sampadananda Mishra ji is with us. I request him to deliver or throw some light on the Aurobindo philosophy and Maharishi Aurobindo for the audience. Thank you.
Yogeshwara Shri Aravindayeva Prabhu Pita Me Bhagavat Swarupa Sive Sadaham Padarenumasya Samarpya Tasmai Sakalam Swakiyam Samarpya Tasmai Sakalam Swakiyam. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Aravindaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Mirambikaya. Namaskar to all of you. So when we come in contact with the writings of Sri Aurobindo and the mother, even just reading few passages, forget about the whole book. And Sri Aurobindo is an ocean of knowledge. Even reading few passages, one will realize we are nothing in front of the knowledge that he has created and all that he has done. I feel really embarrassed when we all are addressed as we are authorities on Sri Aurobindo. We all are students, and there is much, as the mother says, every time we turn the pages of Sri Aurobindo, there's something new which is revealing, because it's a whole consciousness which is communicating with the consciousness that is coming in contact with the writings. Sometimes people ask me, like, we keep books, Sri Aurobindo's books. And when we talk about Sri Aurobindo's books, it's 36 volumes. And each volume having more than 600, 700 pages. 36 volumes, and we all keep it as devotees, as students. We read the books. Sometimes people ask, do you really get time to read all these books? Have you read all the books? And truly we have not read. It will take lives after lives to finish. Yet there are people who have completed his volumes not once, many times. But what I feel, when you look at these books and they're there, feel the presence of Sri Aurobindo's consciousness in those books, in those pages. Merely being in the presence of the books, with that openness, with that devotion, it brings lots of transformation, lots of change into the consciousness, lots of purity into the consciousness, lots of clarity into the understanding. It automatically happens if that openness is there. Many people say it happened that Sri Aurobindo came to Pondicherry in 1910 and receiving the Adesh from above. And when he was in Alipur jail, it was very clear to him And he had asked this question to the divine, that why have you brought me here? And he had got the clear answer that now he has something else to achieve. And all that he did, even we look at his whole idea of nationalism, how he fought for the freedom movement of India, and the clear vision that he had. His nationalism, he clarified that Sanatan Dharma is the only nationalism, the only politics is spirituality. He brought a revolutionary change in promoting, or while promoting, the ideas of politics, nationalism, freedom. And he revolutionized the whole nation. And it was the need of the time. And he didn't want to beg freedom from others. He said it is our right that we want Purna Swaraj. If we look at his political life, it is very different from the other revolutionaries and freedom movement fighters' politics. A lot can be said, a lot has been said, people keep speaking, and we have his very powerful writings recorded in Vande Mataram. But a turn takes place in Alipur jail when he had Sarvam Vasudevamayam Jagat Darshan. And the Gita says, this darshana, this seeing of Vasudeva everywhere, Sarvam Vasudevamiti, sa Mahatma Sudurlabha. Very rare to find such a personality who has the darshan of a Vasudeva everywhere. And what was this darshan? He clarified again in his Uttarpara speech. And he was clear when he came out with this Adesh. He had completely surrendered to Sri Krishna, who was his Ishta Devata. And Sri Krishna himself came to him. He says that he handed over the Gita in my hands. He placed the Gita in my hands and asked me to pursue the sadhana of the Gita. He simply followed what message he received from the divine. And that's how he arrived in Pondicherry, which is the cave of Tapasya. But much before he joined the politics, if we just look back, his father Krishnadhan Ghosh, right from the beginning, was not interested that his children should come in contact with anything Indian, anything that reflects Indian culture, Indian values, Indian spirituality. He wanted his children to become completely anglicized. And there was a reason behind it. So when someone reads the biography, will understand what was the reason behind Krishnadhan Ghosh. Why did he take such a decision? And the same father again is writing and sending the newspaper clips and then making them aware of what was happening during that time in India. And 14 years of Vanavasa, like Sri Ramachandra, 14 years of Vanavasa and 14 years of Vanavasa for Sri Aurobindo in England, comes back well equipped, mastery over so many languages, Greek, Latin, French, Italian, Portuguese, English, a brilliant student. And he was clear there were certain, it is not that the spiritual experiences happened to him only after coming to Pondicherry or only after he had the Vasudevamayam Darshan. But he had these spiritual experiences right from the beginning, time to time. He could realize during his England stay what was his responsibility for Mother India. They had created, this majlis, to fight against the Britishers, fight for the freedom. But suddenly, after coming to Bharat, and the very experience that he had while landing and touching the motherland after 14 years, he said, "A great calm descended unto me, which remained with him for long." How? See, he was preparing himself to come here, getting well equipped. But here, Bhavani Bharati, Bharat Mata, was eagerly waiting to welcome his child. And she welcomed by creating that peaceful, calm atmosphere. And when he landed, he could feel that calmness. And it was during the Baroda period, he came and then joined Gaikwad for his official work. It was during that period that he mastered his language, Bengali, Hindi, learnt Gujarati, Marathi, Sanskrit on his own, and made a sincere effort to unravel the secret of Bharatiya Samskriti, Bharatiya Bhasha, and his whole effort was to find out what is that Atman of Bharat, the spirit of Bharat. And he could manage doing that. Translated, interpreted Ramayana, Mahabharata, Upanishads, Kalidas, Bhartrihari, read Kabir, Tulsidas, Mirabai, much of the literature in Hindi and other languages, Bengali, Indian literature, understood the spirit of Indian art, how to appreciate, and felt the need for revival of this Indian culture because the situation that time was not very conducive because of the British governance. Participated very actively, though initially secretly he participated without revealing himself, but later he revealed himself as an extremist. He participated openly in Indian politics, was put into jail, came out of it, came to the cave of Tapasya Pondicherry, secluded himself. Now the question comes, and many people do raise these questions. What kind of questions? He withdrew from the act of politics right in the middle. Then he didn't do anything. That's a general understanding of people, that after he was released from the jail, he did not actively participate. Yet, he controlled everything by the power of his tapas. If someone, and every little thing that was happening in the field of politics, and whatever was needed for India's development, national development, because he felt, and he has written about it many places, that India's national development must happen because the rise of humanity, the rise of the world depends much on India's national development. If India rises, and India must rise, not for her sake, he has repeatedly said about it, India must rise not for her sake, but for the sake of humanity. That is where his idea of nationalism is very different from the idea of nationalism that others have propagated. We also need to know and understand his idea of nationalism and internationalism. Sarva Bhuta Hite Rata. What was the vision, mission, and the principles of the ancient Indian seers and sages? He carried that. He worked out for that India must rise for Sarva Bhuta Hite Rata. That's what is India's mission. And to do that, how it can be done? He prepared the roadmap. Therefore, it is necessary to read Sri Aurobindo carefully in order to understand what is the task that India must do. So he prepared the roadmap. Everywhere we see what work needs to be done for India's rise and how it should rise. It's not just economic growth which will be seen as India's national development. Of course, that is an important part. He talked about everything that he talked about, whether it is about politics, it's about society, it's about religion, it's about culture, it's about spirituality, it's about life, it's about education, it's about yoga. In every writing of him, we find that Purnatva aspect, that he always presented an integral vision. His philosophy of education provides an integral vision of how education has to be. His philosophy of life presents the integral vision of life. His yoga is called integrally yoga. Politics, he brought in those integral aspects into politics. His idea of nationalism, any aspect of life, education, philosophy, yoga, spirituality, religion, we touch upon, we find that Purnatva. That's why we devotees respect him as Purna Avatar. In every aspect, he brought that perfection, that Purnata. And here, Purnata is not an end. That also needs to be understood. Perfection, Purnata is not something which ends there. After that, there is nothing. If that was the case, then Sri Aurobindo himself will be a failure. Because it is such Purnata. How is Purnata understood? Again, if we remember that verse, Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate, Purnasya Purnamadaya Purname. It is so Purna that there is no end to Purnata. Each Purna can give birth to another Purna. If it is not, then it becomes redundant. It will not have any relevance. But Sri Aurobindo is relevant for ages because he brought Purnatva in a true sense into whatever he spoke. His own sadhana, and when the mother joins in 1914, how the Arya came into existence, where he wrote maximum of his writings on Indian culture, the secret of the Veda, the Upanishads, and many other writings, Indian culture. And then his withdrawal in 1926, 24th of November. Till then, he was known as Aurobindo Ghosh. He signed all documents wherever necessary as Aurobindo Ghosh. But after 24th of November 1926, he came to be known as Sri Aurobindo. That was the day which is known as Siddhi Divas, the day of enlightenment. He attained complete identification with Sri Krishna, whom he equated with the overmind consciousness. And from 1926, Till 1950, till he breathed his last, he took Mahasamadhi. He confined himself to a single room. No talking. Only conversation was with the mother whenever necessary. Absolutely, no or minimum whenever necessary, yes, or few words with other who attended him. That's all. How does someone live in a secluded room for 24 years? And doing what? It's a mystery. What was he doing? And whatever he was doing, like Krishna says to Arjuna in the Gita, that look, Arjuna, I have nothing to do in this world. I have nothing to be achieved. Everything that is to be achieved is achieved by me. I have nothing more to achieve. Yet, if I refrain from action, the whole world will vanish. That's the work of an avatar. The avatar cannot sit at rest. His work continues. Even now it continues and will continue in different forms. So his entire life during that period was completely dedicated for Sarva Bhuta Hiderata. And that's another important definition of a rishi. That he thought only of the good of the humanity. He never lost contact with the world. Look at after seclusion. If you look at all his volumes, 36 volumes, 6-7 volumes are only letters. Each volume having more than 600-700 pages. 7 volumes. Only letter. Letter to whom? All the people who asked questions. And if you look at the questions, all kinds of questions. Practical. What the world was facing, what crisis people were facing in every field, whether in the field of politics, in the society, in spirituality, in education, in life, personal life, collective life, all kinds of crises, all kinds of questions, problems were put before him. And therefore, when one reads these letters, the answers, responses to these letters, and he had the patience to respond to every letter. Only an avatar, only a guru, Sadguru can do this. He never neglected a single disciple's query. Attended and answered and took care that the response that he gives brings a transformation in the consciousness of the person. Changes his understanding. While rest of the humanity, all scholars, while dealing with the Varna Chatushtaya, are dealing with the outer organization of the society as a Brahmana community, Kshatriya community, Vaishya community, Shudra community. Sri Aurobindo takes all these 4 as 4 important powers of human consciousness. Shakti, he calls it Brahma Shakti, Kshatriya Shakti, Vaishya Shakti and Shudra Shakti. And this is fundamental to human consciousness. No one can get rid of these 4. It's fundamental to every human being. And he comes to Brahma, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra later. But he explains these 4 powers as power of wisdom, the power of strength and heroism, the power of love and harmony, and the power of meticulousness or perfection. These are the 4 major powers of human consciousness. And one of these powers is predominant in every human being. In someone, maybe there is an urge in him or her for wisdom, knowledge, and we know that that power is predominant. Someone may feel for that it is in his swabhav or her swabhav, someone carries the force of heroism, strength. So that's the power which is predominant. Someone is more sympathetic, empathetic, love, emotional, seeks for harmony. That's another power which may be predominant in some others. And someone always looks for, laboring hard to complete the work, bring perfection to the work, meticulousness, skillfulness to the work. That's another power which may be predominant in some. And Sri Aurobindo says that whatever the power is prominent or may be prominent in someone, the rest three powers must collaborate with the predominant power and then make it complete. So in a later writing, later writing means it is during the Pondicherry period. In his record of yoga, there is a section called Sapta Chatushtaya. Of course, he speaks about it in his essays on the Gita, in synthesis of yoga. But in the record of yoga also, he speaks about this Shakti Chatushtaya, the four Shaktis. So he says that a Brahmana is not a complete Brahmana unless he has manifest the Kshatriya Shakti, Vaishya Shakti and Shudra Shakti in him. A Shudra is not a complete Shudra if he has not manifest the Brahma Shakti, Kshatriya Shakti and Vaishya Shakti. A Vaishya is not a complete Vaishya if he has not manifested the Brahma, Kshatriya and Shudra Shakti in him. Each Shakti must collaborate with the other Shakti for the completion of that, Purnata of that. Everywhere, that's why in the beginning I said that Sri Aurobindo's approach is the Purna approach. That's how an integral personality manifests and one attains to Purnata. Otherwise, merely manifesting the power of wisdom without having the Vaishya's love and harmony, without having the meticulousness and skillfulness of the Shudra, perfection of Shudra, and the heroic strength of the Kshatriya, mere wisdom is not going to do anything. Chanakya therefore said that however intellectual you may be, however great Shastra learner you may be, you can never protect your Shastra if you do not have the Shastra with you. So along with the Shastra, you have to have the Shastra. And Sri Aurobindo represented this integral personality. We all know what power of wisdom he had manifest in him, and we also look at how heroic he was in his personality, how daring he was in his personality. And we also know how humble, what kind of compassion he carried, what love, harmony and meticulousness he carried. Himself, therefore, we call him as the Purna Avatar. He represented in his life, every aspect of his life, he represented that. Then we come to another aspect connected with this Varna Chatushtaya. If anyone wants to have an introduction to Sri Aurobindo and enter into Sri Aurobindo to understand every aspect of him where he has contributed, one has to begin with that small book called The Mother. You will find everything that he has written in the rest of the books, all in condensed form, in seed form. There he speaks about the four powers of the mother. And he says, this divine mother, she is the manifestation of her four major powers: Maheshwari, Mahakali, Mahalakshmi, and Mahasaraswati. And Mahakali representing the power of wisdom, Maheshwari representing the power of wisdom, Mahakali representing the power of heroic strength, Mahalakshmi representative of universal love and harmony, Mahasaraswati is the goddess of perfection. Now one can link Maheshwari, power of wisdom, Brahma Shakti; Mahakali, power of heroic strength, Kshatriya Shakti; Mahalakshmi, love and harmony, power of Vaishya Shakti; Mahasaraswati, meticulousness, perfection, Shudra Shakti. And worshipping the Divine Mother, coming in contact with her. And who is she? Sri Aurobindo and the mother, they were never different. They have one consciousness. Therefore, the mother says, without him, I exist not, and without me, he is unmanifest. It is the same consciousness. Therefore, in the practice of integral yoga, Sri Aurobindo, any devotee, any disciple came to him, he directed, ask the mother, go to the mother. She is all in all. So worshipping the Divine Mother is manifesting these, or opening oneself, allowing oneself, so then the Divine Mother can manifest all her four powers: wisdom, strength, love and harmony, perfection, Brahma, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, Maheshwari, Mahakali, Mahalakshmi, Mahasaraswati, all manifesting and then making our consciousness complete, attaining Purnata, bringing transformation. Is there something beyond this? We always keep asking, and we have to always keep asking, what lies beyond this? Or is it all about Sri Aurobindo? It's just one aspect, just one page maybe. We need to explore pages after pages. There's no end to it. When the science considered, if you look at the whole scientific understanding of the evolution, it gives everything, it links everything with the matter. Why the West and Europe always gave importance to the matter, because that was the fundamental understanding, that if life emerged from matter, so life is nothing but matter. If mind emerged from life, which has emerged from matter, so mind and life both are nothing but matter. Everything they reduced into matter. They call that matter is everything. But their experiment stopped here. The same experiment happened so many thousands of years before, when Bhrigu approached his father Varuna, saying that, teach me. He said, go and contemplate, do tapasya. Like a scientist goes to his lab, observes, experiments, thinks, and comes out with a thesis saying that everything is matter. And the whole world accepted that yes, because someone has put so much of effort in finding out the truth. That's all. Bhrigu also comes and then presents his thesis that Annam Brahmeti. The truth, matter itself is the truth. There's nothing greater than the matter. Varuna didn't allow him to stop at that moment, but the world of science stopped for a long period with that. But there were many others who came and then brought in something which is close to what was discovered so many thousands of years before by the Upanishadic seers and sages. Varuna says to Bhrigu that no, go and do more observation, more tapasya. He comes back and then says that I found out that prana is Brahman, is greater than Anna. Then he says that no, go and find out more. Then he comes back and says Manas is Brahman. He says still there is something. He goes and comes back and says that Vijnana is Brahman. He says no, still you need to go deep. Then when he comes with the realization of Ananda, then Varuna didn't have to say anything. He says you are already shining with the wisdom and force and light of the truth and the Brahman. Now you will start looking at the world or anything that you face in the world in the light of that light, in the light of that truth, that wisdom. Now you need no more guidance from me. You are self-reliant. If we truly are intent on creating a self-reliant Bharat, we have to dive deep into this spiritual wisdom, which Sri Aurobindo says that it is the most important task that we have to tap into and recover this spiritual wisdom and force. There lies the true contribution of India to the world. And when we read Sri Aurobindo, pages after pages, and if you have little familiarity with the Vedas, with the Upanishads, with the Darshanas, with the Gita, with the Tantra, we see how extensively Sri Aurobindo has elaborated the realizations of the rishis of the past, the experiments of the rishis of the past in these pages, making those relevant in a language conducive to the present consciousness, in a manner which is conducive to the present consciousness, leading us step by step and helping all his materials, because ultimately what he says, that what he said about the Gita, that Gita is yet to liberate the humanity. And when you read Sri Aurobindo, when we read Sri Aurobindo individually or collectively, we contemplate on Sri Aurobindo, this is the feeling again and again, Sri Aurobindo is yet to liberate the humanity. All that he has written has the power to liberate the entire humanity. Not only India got the freedom for which he fought, though it is not a true freedom, but the true freedom is the spiritual freedom. That's why India is yet to realize its true freedom, which lies in the spiritual freedom, in that spiritual force, in that spiritual wisdom. That is why the important task, he says, that the spiritual force and wisdom has to be recovered. And for that, once that wisdom is recovered, he says that past mold, the framework of the past has to be broken. But the insights, the gains of the past, the insights from the past, the glow from the past, the wisdom from the past must be kept alive. While creating new forms of literature, new forms of architecture, new forms of art, new forms of religion. And when he talked about new form of religion, he talked about the religion of humanity. And he says finally, every problem that we keep facing in us, the spiritual force and wisdom must be the means to find a solution to the problem that the humanity faces. He talked about the transformation of human consciousness. He talked about all that lies beyond, because mind is not the end. That's why human creation, human being itself, is not an end by itself, it's a transitional being. We are on transit. He talked about a new creation, a new world order. And everything has to be organized, keeping that new manifestation of the higher consciousness which lies beyond the mind, which he talked of, the supermind. And that supramental force, they did, both Sri Aurobindo and the mother, they did their sadhana, they did their tapasya in order to bring it down, but to bring it down not by force. It is, as Sri Aurobindo himself, right in the beginning of the mother, says that there has to be an intense, pure, sincere aspiration from below to which the higher force responds. And bringing it down and fixing it on the earth means that with that intensity, purity, sincerity, Sri Aurobindo and the mother, along with few other of his disciples or friends or co-sadhaks, they did that intense tapasya. So then, if there is any change, any transformation, any work of supramental, it is in response to that sincere aspiration. That's why in Sri Aurobindo's yoga, he speaks that we need three things: aspiration, rejection, and surrender. Aspiration for the truth, for the light, for all that is necessary, all that can create a conducive climate for the descent of the Supreme. A rejection of all that which opposes. Rejection of all that which opposes. And the aspiration and rejection can happen naturally only when there is a complete surrender. And by surrender, it means the first step in surrender is to hand over all our responsibility to the divine. And for that, we need to have a sankalpa. That's why the mother says the will to hand over our responsibilities to the divine is surrender. And once this will is there, once this sankalpa shakti is there, and we have already formulated that will, we have already handed over our responsibilities to the divine. The next step is self-giving, which means we have to organize every aspect of our life around that central will of handing over our responsibilities to the divine. And when the work continues with that openness, that namas, that plasticity, that aspiration, that sincerity, that devotion, then it culminates in self-consecration. When we talk surrender, surrender is complete, samarpana is complete with surrender, self-giving and self-consecration. And this is the process. And when we talk about the practice of integral yoga, so there is no fixed discipline, no ritual, nothing, but one has to create a discipline for oneself, not an imposed discipline, but a discipline for oneself based on this aspiration, rejection, and surrender. That's how the beginning of the integral yoga takes place. And then there are plenty of guidelines, materials which are available to us, so then we can move forward on the path of integral yoga, invoking the presence of the divine, carrying the presence of the divine for guidance, for showing us the path and leading us towards that ultimate attainment of Purnatva. And this is where lies the uniqueness of Sri Aurobindo's yoga, Sri Aurobindo's philosophy of life, Sri Aurobindo's philosophy of education, Sri Aurobindo's philosophy of nationalism. That's why, again, I repeat that what Sri Aurobindo said, that spirituality is the only politics of Bharat and Sanatan Dharma is the only nationalism of Bharat. And he himself, what he talked about, what is the message if we ask, we have to remember what he had said to his wife, that you have married to a madman who has lots of madnesses. I have this madness that If God exists, I must know the God. Who is He? Find out the way where He lives and realize that God exists. I have this madness that when other people are regarding their land as a piece of, uh, earth or some rivers, forests, and oceans, mountains, I regard my land as the Bhavani Bharati. And he worked for the Jagarana of that Shakti. And then he said, like, when a madman becomes successful, becomes a Mahapurush. And this we have seen how it has become Charitartha in Sri Aurobindo's own life. So one lesson as a student of Sri Aurobindo, reading for the first time, I had learned that we all have to carry some kind of madness and make all sincere efforts for the fulfillment of that madness. It's a great life lesson which always gives us this prerana, encourages us, inspires us to lead our life in a meaningful way. So there are plenty of such messages that we receive from Sri Aurobindo and the mother while coming in contact with their writings. And I feel that every Indian who is truly concerned about life, truly concerned about one's own nation, truly concerned about oneself, truly concerned about Indian culture, the Shastras, the philosophy, must read Sri Aurobindo. It is not absolutely necessary that one has to become a devotee or follower. Sri Aurobindo didn't wish that. He said that I have come here not to create mutts or mandirs or ashrams in the traditional sense. His ashram is a human laboratory where everyone has to put himself or herself into test. That was his message. That such openness, such wideness, one will never find anywhere. No restriction, no constriction. There is a free growth of everyone. There is everyone who comes to Sri Aurobindo, he finds, doesn't matter to what community, to what sect, to what land, to what religion one belongs to. But one has sufficient clarity when someone reads Sri Aurobindo. So, as Chittaranjan Das himself said in the court, because he was his advocate, he said, long after Sri Aurobindo left his body, he will be remembered as the prophet of spirituality. He will be remembered as the master of nationalism, spirituality, the prophet of nationalism, the prophet of spirituality. So that is what is I do not remember exactly the exact quote, but this is what something that he will be remembered by the world as someone who has truly contributed for India's national development, and India's national development always is necessary for the world to become free, liberated, and free from all its problems and experience what true freedom is. And that spiritual strength, that spiritual force, that spiritual wisdom one can find in every writing of Sri Aurobindo, and especially his major writings like Savitri, Life Divine, Synthesis of Yoga, Foundations of Indian Culture, Human Cycle. So there's no end to it. All his major works need to be studied carefully, understood, and put into practice. Then the true work that Sri Aurobindo and the mother intended to happen will happen. And it all depends upon you, me, and rest of the world. how do we take this work forward? Om Namo Bhagavate. Dhanyavad.
Thank you very much, sir, for your enlightened talk. In your talk, you mentioned about two aspects. One is Sanatana Dharma and nationalism, politics and spirituality. But when you look at the current scenario, both these two things are absent. We are talking about a development of nationalism without the principles of Sanatana Dharma, and we talk about politics without spirituality. So my question is, how these two important principles, that is, one is a Sanatana Dharma and the concept of spirituality, should be ingrained while developing modern India.
Absolutely.
21st century modern India. That's my question.
It's not a question, actually, it's a concern of everyone. It's a concern that it happens in the present scenario of, forget about politics and nationalism. Even if you look at the ordinary life, the society, we don't find that reflected anywhere. That is why, the first task is the recovery of that spirit, unless and until we realize the spiritual self of ours. That's why when we are renewing and rethinking about our education, say for example, the most important aspect is the change has to come in the education field. And while bringing this change, and which has happened, and it is a blessing that much of the things that we find today in new education policy is so much in consonance with what Sri Aurobindo had drafted long back as national education. What he has spoken about, because his principle of, fundamentally, if you look at the principles of his yoga and the principles of education, they are not separate. And more of that we need to bring into, because life and education also cannot be think in isolation. Because life is the field, education is the process. It is a life which provides the opportunity for educating ourselves. And life has to be transformed by following the principles of yoga, by practicing yoga, by being on that path. And education, again, is a process by which the life can be transformed. So that's why we need that change to happen at every level. But the most fundamental change must happen at the education level. We need to change the entire education system and then teach them in a manner which carries the values of spirituality and Sanatana Dharma, or which is based on those principles. That can be a beginning step. Then, whether it happens at a mass level or not, every individual, at least those who are connected with Sri Aurobindo, must take the sadhana seriously and then reflect in one's own individual consciousness and manifest those which are fundamental to the integral yoga, integral education at an individual level. Then the work can reflect. It will take a long time. That's why, like when Nalinikanta Gupta, another devotee and Sri Aurobindo's friend, disciple, and they were together. So when he talks about when, how, he says that don't think of the duration in terms of time or time in terms of duration, when in terms of duration, but what are the stages, next stages, which stage to happen when. Think of that. So when we take one step, then we have to very carefully again see what is the next step, when to take, how to take. So then we move from step to step, stages after stages, taking their work forward. But The change has to come at every level, and every one of us, we can start at our own level and then put our minds together to bring change in the collectivity. That's why in Sri Aurobindo, it is not just the individual sadhana, the collective sadhana is most important. In silos, individually, everyone does fine. But the moment two people come together, they know where lies the problem. When this interaction happens, we know all our shortcomings and weaknesses, they just pop up when we come together. Until then, we were not aware of that. These forces didn't get the opportunity to rise up or pop up. That's why collective sadhana, we must be grateful to each other that we create opportunities for each other to know what weaknesses we carry within. We become aware of that, work on that, rectify that, and then work together harmoniously. That's why the mother says, a harmonious collective aspiration can change the whole circumstance. That's the solution. A harmonious collective aspiration can change the circumstance. If we are concerned about the change, then this is the way. A harmonious collective aspiration.
When India was partitioned, Sri Aurobindo was in a very heartbroken state, and he said, just like a prophecy, that India will become one again. That is why you go to Aurovilla, still that Akhanda Bharat map is still there. Can you throw some light on that?
Yeah. And not to accept the way things were accepted. Handing over. He said, accept the dominion status. Slowly build your own strength. Create your own system of governance. Then take a full charge of that. Why in a hurry? He knew that if it is not accepted and the other way things happen, India is going to suffer. And we know today the consequence. Everyone who reads Cripp's mission and then what happened will agree that yes, India should have accepted Cripp's proposal, what Sri Aurobindo envisioned. And then also, when the messenger went from Pondicherry to Delhi and came back disappointed, Sri Aurobindo said, I knew that it will not be accepted. Then also he was asked. No one spared Sri Aurobindo. They asked, when you knew, why did you send? Krishna knew that the war cannot be avoided, yet he went as the Shanti Duta and then told Dhritarashtra that, look, pacify your children, I will take care of Pandavas. The decision lies between you and me, whether the war will take place or not. Pacify your children, I will take care of Pandavas. Krishna tried to his level best. It was inevitable to happen, maybe to give a different experience to the whole nation, national consciousness. But he says that India will rise, and today we know what kind of possibilities we are seeing G20 think of. It's one of the greatest achievements. Today we have the voice. Today India is respected. We are gaining back our value, our position, our respect. Every word of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother is going to be fulfilled and no one can stop. Because with that pure heart, they worked hard to bring that force which will take care of the transformation of the world. Sarva Bhuta Hiterata. It will happen. But something was inevitable to happen. The Asuric forces are much more powerful. But the fight will go on. Ultimately, Satyameva Jayate. This is a land of truth, land of light, land of consciousness, and it will happen. We need to be sincere. We need to be the aspiration for the truth, light. And if we can manifest that in our individual life, then collective life will become automatically harmonious. and that harmonious collective aspiration will change the circumstance.
Connection of the New Education Policy 2020. Lot of debate is going on in India relating to introduction of value system as far as education is concerned. In context of Sri Aurobindo, what is your especially opinion? Should we include the value education system as far as the NEP 2020 is concerned?
If you say values by do's and don'ts, then it is better not we introduce. The values are not truly do's and don'ts. It is not the moral, ethical, societal values which will come up by itself. The consciousness will take care of. When Sri Aurobindo speaks of values, it is the inner powers, the powers within, manifestations of the powers within. The power of the education system must take care of strengthening the power of concentration, the power of observation, the power of memory, refinement of the senses, education of the mind, the power of imagination, language skill, power of expression. Every aspect of the powers within, the inner faculties, they have to be well taken care of, elevated. If that becomes a part of the new education policy, then it will fulfill its mission. Not superficial value education like based on do's and don'ts and some moral ethical values. That way it won't serve any purpose. The inner values, the soul values, the spiritual values must be must manifest.
The concluding part of the lecture program, Sri Sampadananda Mishra ji told in the beginning itself, I am not an authority in Aurobindo philosophy, but a student of Aurobindo philosophy. And he mentioned it, India must rise, not in the interest of India, but in the interest of the entire humanity. Now it is very much evident after this corona situation, what it has created in the entire world. When the other countries wanted to encash whatever it is possible in these turbulent days, only India thought how it can be solved. This itself is the proof that India must rise, not for India's interest, but for the entire humanity. And the approach of India is entirely different from the beginning itself. When they feel Earth is there to exploit for our pleasure or our luxury, but India thought it is our motherland, it is our mother. As Mishra ji very well put it, we see the land as Bhavani Bharati, not a piece of land. And he mentioned it, the letters answered by Maharishi Aurobindo runs into 7 volumes, which is approximately around 5,000 pages. If we read at least these letters, we will get the solution for all sorts of problems, maybe personal, national or universal. So therefore you have put it in, say, around 45 to 60 minutes time. You have created a lot of interest and throw light on Sri Aurobindo. We from the Mythic Society Managing Committee, we thank you very much for your very well and thought-provoking lecture. Thank you very much.